In the mental health field, too often, we've made it seem as if it's just in your head.
The landlord can hijack the rent by 20%. That impacts people's mental health.
Can't have a profit-driven mental health care system if we want our people to be connected and healthy.
Welcome back to It's Not Just in Your Head. Hey everybody, this is Max. This is a solo episode. Harriet was not able to make it for this week, and I asked her if I could do a solo episode. She said yeah. So this episode is on how to form a tenants union, because I know a little bit about that. Also, I'm recording this in my car. It's nighttime, and my housemates are trying to sleep, and I didn't want to record it in my room, which is what I normally do. So the audio might sound kind of weird. I'm parked in like a dark, I kind of wish you guys could see this. It's like kind of dark and creepy. But I live in like a quasi bougie neighborhood in Santa Barbara, so I'm not like afraid. My car, my driver's side window is open, so the audio will kind of like move around a little bit more, so it won't sound like I'm in a tin can, but the audio might sound weird, so apologies. Okay, so why would I do an episode on how to form a tenants union? If you've been listening to the podcast, you are aware that Harriet and I believe very strongly that everything in our economy and society and culture and all of that is connected to mental health. And if you are a renter, if you are a tenant, especially during the COVID crisis right now, if you lost your job and you are currently benefiting from something like the federal or different iterations of like state, county, smaller municipal rent moratoriums that have been passed, you are lucky for now. Although in some places I think the moratoria have already expired and you're already screwed and you're already scrambling. You may be in a lot of rent debt. So this topic was already really important way before the pandemic started. But it's even more important now. Okay, so maybe let's start with like, what is a tenants union? There's like a simple way to answer the question, and there's a complicated way to answer the question. Simple way to answer the question is, think there's an apartment building with like 30 to 50 units in it. A tenants union, in theory, in that situation, would be that all the tenants are united as a group to collectively bargain with their landlord for better living conditions. And that's it. And from that really simple perspective, how you would form a tenants union would be simply you start talking to other tenants. You knock on doors. I'm going to draw a little bit from the union organizing training that I've had, the small amount of it that I've had, which is that you listen more than you talk. You build a sense of rapport and camaraderie with the people who live in your apartment building, but you let them know that you have some grievances. They could be around like plumbing issues. They could be, I don't know, the landlord just started like coming around and coming into the unit without asking. Like there's, we've all kind of experienced these kinds of things. So you could just be honest, like, I've been experiencing this thing. Have you been experiencing this thing? And most likely, if you're finding like friendly tenants who are not like slamming the door in your face saying like, leave me alone, I want my privacy, which that happens, you can probably build a small little group of friends who, if you kind of play your cards right in terms of like social skills and communication skills, and you pitch the idea to them like, well, what if we form a tenants union? That's kind of all you have to do. From there are definitely like sort of nuts and bolts to it, right? Like they're probably going to say like, well, how do you do that? And then you go like, oh shit, well, I don't know. let's Google it or something, right? So that's the simple answer. Apartment complex, apartment building, get a group of people together and you form a tenants union. And I guess maybe before I get into the more complex answer to the, like, what is it question, like, why would you do that? Well, think of it this way. Imagine that every single person in the building is having plumbing issues. And let's assume that nobody in the building is talking to each other about this. Each individual tenant is probably being met with the landlord saying, okay, we're going to send the plumbers over to like snake the toilet or like unclog the sink or whatever, and we're going to charge you some fees. We really hate to do it, but it's just something we have to do, right? Um, First of all, that might be illegal. I'm obviously not a lawyer, but a tenant's lawyer I've been talking to recently has actually stated that those kinds of maintenance fees actually should not be put onto the tenant, but probably depends on what your lease says. But let's say in like a 30 unit apartment building, this is what's happening. So you got 30 different people who are experiencing plumbing issues, and they're having to bear the brunt of the cost of the maintenance fees related to the plumbing issue. Now, if all 30 of those people talked to each other and they all found out that they were all experiencing that issue, they would all simultaneously come to the conclusion that there is something wrong with the plumbing system in the building, which is the landlord's responsibility to fix. And they would probably then come to the conclusion that they shouldn't have to pay it. In fact, maybe they should start thinking strategically about ways to kind of like, start with a nice request, maybe by email, and maybe start kind of escalating tactically toward like, winning on the demand to like no longer have to pay for the plumbing. So this is like a basic labor organizing principle. If you as an individual ask for a raise, you're probably not going to get it. If everybody threatens to go on strike, if they don't all get raises, you're all a lot more likely to get raises. And yeah, it's a lot more complicated than that, the way unions work, the way raises work, the way strikes work. But the general principle is basically accurate. Okay, so the more complicated answer to the question of what's a tenant union is, so what we formed it was either March or April, like right when COVID like officially hit really hard. What we ended up forming is actually called a Tenants Council. It's called the Santa Barbara Tenants Council. And if you're listening and you're curious, you can go to facebook.com/SB Tenants Council, give some likes and stuff. It'll help the page. It'll boost the algorithms. It'll, help other tenants in our area find the resources that we're providing and the organizing that we're doing. So a comment on language: tenants union, tenants council, tenants association. These kinds of terms are basically interchangeable. In some areas, some people will differentiate between a tenants union and a tenants council as being totally different things. Some would say that a tenants union is like this group of tenants spanning a whole city or something, or a whole like section of a city. Some will say like a council is just an apartment building. Some will tell you that it's those two things switch. So like a tenants union is an apartment building, a council like is a larger geographic area. I think that these terms shouldn't matter. It just depends on like how you define it as a group. So we call ourselves a tenants council. A council being a sort of like, if you think of like a circle, and people sitting in a circle. We can't because of COVID, but we are people who, I think every single one of us on the tenants council live in totally different parts of the city of Santa Barbara. Most of us are, I'd say roughly half of us are renting from landlords in like single family homes. Like Santa Barbara is like, there's a ton of single family homes, which are like, for like in like urban planning talks, like that's always talked about as like, it's like the worst design idea ever in the history of like building cities was like single family homes. So that's a whole other like rant. But like I live in a single family home, several other tenants union members who do. Others are renting from like big property managers in like big apartment buildings. Others live in like student family housing connected to UCSB. So there's like a diversity of the kinds of places where all of our members live. But we are not currently focused on organizing the actual buildings we live in for a variety of reasons. Like for me, I live in a single family home with like housemates, and our landlord actually has our rent like way under market rate, and we're extremely lucky. Like I'm just very, very lucky to live there. So there's no like on-site tenant organizing necessary. In fact, it'd be a really terrible idea to do that where I live. A couple of our other members are in situations like that, although one of our members did recently run into an issue with fees that the property management company has been It seems like probably illegally imposing on them because of COVID. Like they're trying to find ways to kind of like penny pinch against the student tenants in this one particular site. So this person and someone else we found through social media are most likely going to engage in a little campaign to like talk to other student renters within that building to see if they're all experiencing the same issue, and that would move toward that like single apartment building sort of tenants union idea. Um, okay, in any case, the more what I meant to kind of get into with the more complex answer to what is a tenants union was to say that so also in Santa Barbara, wherever you live, there is probably something like the following. Like we have something called the Santa Barbara Rental Property Association. There are also usually other kinds of like homeowner associations, landlord associations, apartment building owner associations. So there are associations of landowners, of property owners, and of landlords. And what associations means are these are like groups of people who are associated by some sort of common cause. And so this very literally in sort of like Marxist terms, like these are very sort of capitalist class types of people who passively accrue income based off of owning property that that is a commodity for them. So they have associations, and through those associations, usually they like pay dues, they pay membership fees, and they usually have like legal representatives. They're usually connected to larger, like smaller homeowner associations are usually connected to other homeowner associations. I should just call them HOAs. They usually call them HOAs. HOAs are often connected to other sort of landlord lobbyist bodies that can be like more local and municipal based, or state or national or even international, because they're like international speculative real estate corporations. These associations have a lot of power. That's obvious, right? So to match that power, or at least to attempt to, having tenants associations makes a lot of sense, right? If you only had homeowners associations, landlord associations, apartment building owner associations, and all that kind of stuff, and you had nothing but like isolated like renters of property whose housing is increasingly unaffordable and precarious, especially during the COVID age, with zero sort of association-esque resources available to them, we would all be completely screwed, right? So the more complex answer to the question, well, like, what is a tenants union? Like, why should anyone join a tenants union? Is it a tenants union or tenants association or tenants council? Is simply a group of tenants who recognize that it makes more sense for them to work together as tenants, as a group of people who have a very basic economic, not identity based, not like Facebook friend based, not like none of that. It's like you all rent from a landlord, and you can all like be evicted for usually pretty simple reasons, and you're going to be better off as renters, as tenants, if you associate, if you like form an association of some kind. Okay, so the simple answer of like, it's a bunch of tenants in an apartment building who bind together and like fight their landlord on stuff or whatever. Like that's sort of like the traditional idea. And there are a variety of like union organizing and community organizing methods that you can use to achieve that on site. What my group has done is, like I said, it's not site based. So I'll just tell a little story of how we got off the ground. A couple of us had found this document, so it's by a group called TANC in the Bay Area. It's TANC. It stands for Tenants and Neighborhood Councils of the Bay Area, I think. But the whole idea is like tenants, councils, and neighborhood councils. And neighborhood councils are a really cool idea as well, by the way. I probably won't talk about that for this podcast episode. But we'd found their like guide to or like tenant organizing in a pandemic. which kind of started, like, the document starts off saying, like, if you want to do a rent strike, here's how you do it. But then it goes through all these other steps. It starts with, like, a set of principles, which are really cool. Like, housing is a human right. Capitalism is pitting us against each other, blah, blah, blah. They're cool principles most kind of left-wing people can get behind. Then they have, like, just a task list, like, step 1, step 2, step 3. So when we saw that forming tenants council is that's the term we adopted, we actually found that it was really easy. So, like, why don't we just do it? So that's what we did. So the steps that Tank had recommended were, and this is not, I'm not actually reading off the document, but what I remember from it is that it was basically saying if even just two, and a larger number is better, but even just two tenants form a group together, they give it a name, the Wilkinson Township Tenants Group, you can call it whatever you want. You create a little Gmail account and you send a letter to a landlord saying whatever you need to say. We have observed these issues as tenants. We, as the tenants group, kindly request or militantly demand, you phrase it however you want. You send it to the landlord, and the landlord responds to you in good faith, in bad faith, whatever. Just by nature of the fact that more than one tenant, a group of tenants, had engaged in some sort of request to make a change, means that you have now stepped into the realm of collective bargaining with a landlord. Collective bargaining, that's the basic idea behind labor organizing, right? So that's what we did. One of our friends who's like visually impaired, lives off of disability payments, gets like checks sent to him for disability, and as on Section 8. He had an issue. He kind of described to us how he and other disabled people are discriminated against, like, all the time in the housing market. And it's something that's, like, it's sort of invisible. Most, like, non-disabled people, like, have no idea. Like myself, I did not know this. But landlords are always asking for proof of income. And in California, it's actually illegal to ask, like, what the source of income is. You shouldn't quote me on this, but I think it's, like, it's okay for them to, like, ask for, like, proof of income to, like, make sure you actually have some kind of income stream to prove that you'll be able to pay rent, which is, like, arguably reasonable. But to like, ask, like, where, basically, like, what do you do and, like, where does the money come from, is actually illegal because of, I think there's a few reasons, but for disability reasons, if it can be used against you in a discriminatory way. And the thing is, apparently it often is. So our friend was saying that he was like, well, just look at this Craigslist ad. Like, this is really normal. Like, sometimes they don't post it on Craigslist, but when you actually talk to them or when you see the form, it's asking questions that technically are against, like, the Fair Housing Act, which is, like, California state law. So we said, well, this is, like, a nice little starting campaign. Like, why don't we send an email to this particular property management company and let them know, like, hey, this is illegal, and we're demanding that you don't do that. And let this guy sign a year lease. So they said no. We've chosen someone else, and we're not breaking any laws. Like, they responded to us, and we were like, okay, maybe we kind of stretched. We interpreted something in a certain way, and it was kind of a stretch. But we realized after sending the email, like, okay, we did it. Like, we tried to engage in some collective bargaining with a landlord. It wasn't, like, a super strong campaign. It was just sort of like getting our feet wet. But we felt a little bit of power from that. We're like, okay, we could do this with any landlord. We could just, like, email any landlord and say, we heard there's cockroaches, like, get rid of the fucking cockroaches. Sincerely, Santa Barbara Tenants Council. And if we wanted to, we could then, like, publish the letter on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram and say, like, yo, we put this one property management company on blast. We are the Tenants Council. We are powerful. We are making moves in our town. So that's basically what we've been doing over the last few months. We haven't done anything that's, like, extremely public in that way, in, like, sort of a direct action or, like, landlord shaming way, although those tactics are on the table, and we do have some things kind of moving down the pipeline. We are going to be moving in a different direction, more sort of like policy change advocacy level very soon, like very like fast campaign coming out of a different coalition. I can't really talk about like on air right now, but something else we've done is like we started just like a weekly office hours program where like the tenant's lawyer from Tenant's Aid that has joined our group. As soon as we went public, he was like, "Yo, I'll help you." Like he comes to every meeting. He's really awesome, super informative. We did like what do they call it? A town hall like live stream. It was just like a Know Your Rights for tenants. And like all the all the city council members who were like sort of left leaning like posted on their Facebooks and social media that this was happening. We had like thousands and thousands of views of the Know Your Rights live stream, which in Santa Barbara is like pretty big numbers because it's a relatively small city. The point is that I, as like a tenant, as somebody who's been paying rent my entire life, and I probably will never actually own a home under the current economic conditions. I, as a tenant, found other tenants who were either people that I'd already kind of known from like activist projects or people that I just sort of met through talking to someone and talking to someone about, hey, do you want to try this thing out? We have successfully found that if you just sort of follow these methodical steps and you try to be really consistent about it, you have like weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings and you set up, digital communication infrastructure and you have like phone calls and text messages and Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff. If you do this regularly and you just like, you come to the meetings sober and you make like good decisions about how to move your group forward, you build power for people that don't have a lot of power and you feel really empowered. And I want to close with one story about this one particular member who we found as soon as we went public on Facebook about what we were doing. This woman kind of popped up into one of our meetings and God, like she was kind of a wreck, not not in a bad way, just like in a really tragic way. It was really hard for her to explain herself because so she has like PTSD and she had experienced some pretty terrible things from a really abusive landlord. She was subletting from this person, and because this person wasn't officially the landlord, there were like certain weird like issues with her trying to get like police involved, and she didn't want to get police involved, but I from what I recall, she was either like assaulted or I think he threatened to kill her or something. It was really, really bad. I think he was like this really abusive alcoholic from what she said. So she popped into one of the meetings saying like, I don't really know what my issue is. Like, I don't know what I need help with. I just need someone to hear my story. So she opened up about her story and we all started, went around the circle like in Zoom and started suggesting, we like validated her a lot. We're like, that just sounds really bad. Like, what do you think you need? Like, how can we help? One person pops off this idea like, oh, well, maybe if you talk to like the victim witness program, like through the county, like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I'll try that. Oh, if you talk, if you connect it to this resource, what's the status of the police? Like, do you need help like finishing the restraining order paperwork or whatever? And over time, like, so she'd come to the meetings every week. She got a couple of our phone numbers and like, she like texted me or called me a couple times. She's having like a panic attack. This one situation, like at first I felt kind of iffy about her because I was like, well, she's dealing with a lot and she's like suffering a lot, but like her shit's pretty intense. And I think also as a therapist, I was like, well, it seems like she needs some kind of like counseling and stuff for what she's going through, not in a like a judgmental way, just like that's I think what she needs more than anything else. But I also just wanted to take in good faith, like this woman's just been dealing with crazy shit that's actually like primarily related to housing and whatever her trauma history is outside of that. I want to have a lot of compassion for this human being. So I'm telling this story because I think like when she first kind of came to the door, so to speak, like through Zoom, she was dealing with so much, and she let us know after maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks, all the things in between our meetings where we helped her just fill out the paperwork because she was so full of anxiety, filling out the paperwork for talking to legal aid, talking to the victim witness group, talking to the police again because she had to, and had to go through some other like weird, I don't know if it was like a court thing, some stupid legal thing she had to do. Just filling out the paperwork was like really re-traumatizing. It spiked her anxiety, but we like kind of held her hand through the whole thing. Just through like she'd text and just be like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I know I'm being so annoying. Like, could we get on the phone so you could just help? Like, I just need someone to like be there, like while I'm filling out the forms and stuff like that. So we did this with her for a few weeks, and then like things have like stabilized a lot for her, and to the point where like she's showing up to like the organizing meetings where it's not problem solving people's issues, it's like taking on organizing tasks, which like require like a little bit more sort of like cognitive groundedness, where like she's not in that place anymore because we did actually help her like with her situation, which is like a pretty dire situation, like required a lot of like like a group of people like problem solving and supporting somebody, um, to the point where now she's like, you guys are my family, and like let's fight these shitty landlords and let's bind together and like make our lives better. And she's really committed to this. It's actually pretty incredible to watch, like in real time. Also, we she and I did some door knocking at one of the big property management companies to drop off some flyers and kind of assess for grievances with this big company last Saturday. And like she's like really good at like talking to people face to face, just like knocking on doors, super confident. Like she's just able to like kind of get into it and like flow. And I was like, man, like this lady's doing great. So also from like a sort of mental health professional perspective, that's like one really small case study. But I would say just from observing that of like the power of a group of people that aren't really there for mental health specific reasons, but binding together actually as like a sort of class unity project. Like we are a class of people as like tenants, and we need to stick together and support each other. There were like very direct mental health interventions provided for this person, and I think for the rest of us, and that we got to fulfill this need to be like altruistic, helpful, compassionate humans. And that made us feel more empowered and more connected to this person as well. And I'd consider, like, I wouldn't consider her like my friend, but I could see over time, like, feeling like she's my friend. Like right now, I feel like she's my comrade for sure. Where I'd fight for her. Like if I, if I heard about something happening, like in the domain of housing, like again, I mean, like right now, I'd be willing to go out, like, and like protest and show my face, like in public and like hold up signs and stuff for her if it was like that landlord tried to come and get her again or something like that. And I know for a fact she'd do the same for me at this point too. So I'm speaking about this from like a practical point of view for tenants who just like need something right now. They need support. They need to actually figure out how to fight back against this system that is potentially going to make them like homeless and like lose everything, right? And from a mental health perspective, that engaging in this kind of work, forming a tenants union, joining a tenants union, tenants association, tenants organizing, I really do think this stuff is really good for your mental health. It gets you outside of your own head. It gets you outside of your own issues. It does take some time, right? So like committing, let's say, just an hour a week to like going to meetings where like, and like not everybody's into meetings. Like I really like meetings. Like most people I know don't like meetings. But just committing to like an hour a week of this kind of thing, therapy is an hour a week, right? So if you can go to like 1 hour a week meeting and like maybe respond to some text messages or some emails or something in between, or even on a weekend knock on some doors to like listen to what other tenants are facing. Quite frankly, I think like most of you listening probably have some time to do this. Maybe not like a ton of time, but you probably have enough time to do something like this. So I do highly encourage you, beloved listeners, to consider all the stuff that I said today. And I think that's it. Let's see, I'm going to check this here recording. It's about 30 minutes talking about myself in my car. It's not too bad. So if anybody wants to contact myself or Harriet, you can email us at itsnotjustinyourhead@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon account now. It's patreon.com/itsnotjustinyourhead. If you'd like to be a supporter, give us billions of dollars, because everyone listening is obviously like really, really rich. Bill Gates, we love you. Jeff Bezos, we love you. Donald Trump, donate your properties to us. Donate them to community land trusts. Turn them into housing cooperatives. It's normal therapist mental health stuff that you say in a podcast. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening, and keep fighting out there. Bye-bye.